And I think we are live. Welcome, everyone. We are Thursday today, live from Montreal, from the FLUX Immersive studio. My name is Hugo Larim. Some of you probably, or maybe new to these actual webinar form. Great to be here today. Noon here in Montreal, 6 o'clock in Europe. We maybe have the West Coast that's already awake. It will be an interesting day today. We're going to be discussing about release 21.4, and specifically, which we actually did on April 15th, so which was very recent. And we'll actually focus on the new functionality. For the ones that were in the webinar last week, we've actually covered the introduction of SPAT Revolution Essential. So the SPAT Revolution 21.4 was to support this new license, the Essential license, but there's as well a bunch of little new features for Essential and Ultimate license. So again, a great to be having you all today. I'm just gonna make sure I am fully ready, and let's try that. Yeah, that will look better. Excellent. We are actually going to take the form of an actual Q&A as well. So we're going to be introducing today the new functionality, and we'll keep some time. For the ones that were on the live stream last week, you should be hearing me fairly good today, and you should not have a little click. Was it on the left side? Thanks to some little clocking issue, which are supposed to be fixed. Yay! So I'm assuming everyone's hearing me well, and our colleagues are actually online. You've got probably Arsène on the call, who's actually in my ears as well, which will most probably going to tell me if everything goes well and if it sounds good. And we'll be passing the questions as we go along. So again, my name is Hugo Larin with the FLUX Immersive Consulting team. We're actually, we're going to be discussing, as I said, the 21.4. En français, we can actually do a bit of French, and sí, claro, puedo hacer un poquito de español. But that's as far as I can do. But we will be focusing on an English presentation today. But on the chat, feel free to actually ask questions in French or in English. In Spanish, not too sure. Actually, you could try in Spanish as well, and my friend Arsène could copy and paste them. And I'm going to try to do my best, to support those. Excellento. So yeah, the What's New webinar. Well, what's new, basically 21.4 was all about what we call the power for SPAT Revolution for everyone. That new Essential license, which we've introduced last week. We won't go too much in detail. I'll kind of review this, and we'll jump right into some functionalities. But really, that was to support Essential and Ultimate license. It brings a new homepage as well. Homepage, a welcome page to load your project, and as well as a compatibility wizard. Compatibility wizard, we're actually going to show you this a bit later. New panning techniques, well, stereo panning law, I should say. So 7 of those right now are available when you decide to use just stereo panning in a stereo room, for example. Because yes, SPAT can be used as a stereo, an object-based mixing for stereo renders. Then we're going to be talking about today the most, sensitive part of the conversation, are, some of the source behavior. And that is a very important thing that we did in the 21.4 release. Our source objects, we call them source or objects, for us it's the same, how they behave, and some information that are being now provided in the 3D UI. So yes, we'll be covering as well source over listening ed. And that is going to be best seen where we're actually going to be in SPAT. And I'll explain this very important point. And introducing as well a spherical room protection zone. Some of you may be familiar with the radius. For the one that have been using SPAT, we'll talk about this actual protection zone, this little bubble, which is basically bringing a relationship to the actual distance, as a signal, an object moves away, the drop factor. Something that's kind of unique to this engine, for that matter of fact. If you've been doing, music just using traditional panner, you're basically just positioning. You're not necessarily dealing with level signal drop over distance, and that is an important fact. So we're actually going to spend some time on this. And the last one as well, which we'll be covering today, is actually scaling when we're changing a speaker configuration to another. Okay, so that will be kind of a nutshell. Just to remind everyone, for the ones that weren't on the stream last week, SPAT Essential was introduced. So basically, a a focus on the functionality for every day. So 32 audio sources, single room format is actually part as well. So basically, the whole idea here with SPAT Essential was to bring, a simplified, a lighter version. Typically, when you don't need to render multiple formats at the same time, or when you don't need, a large amount of objects. So SPAT Essential supports 32 audio channels. They can be mono, stereo, multi-channel. Does provide as well some support for ambisonic, first order, actually 2 first order ambisonic, and it can be a format microphone. So if you happen to have recorded, for example, with a Sennheiser Ambeo, a Rode, or one of those beautiful, a format microphone, we actually support those with the transcoding in the Essential as well, like we're doing with SPAT Revolution, but I kind of want to highlight some of the capabilities of the Essential version. And as soon as we're dealing with these scene-based, these ambisonic, well, the transcoders are part of that. 3 main, stream format are supported with Essential. The binaural for headphones, so a true binaural synthesis of all the objects. Not necessarily just virtualizing the speaker set, but actually, the scene itself. We obviously, so I'm going to move my microphone here. The channel base, support as well, so up to 12 speakers. So that would obviously mean, up to a Dolby Atmos 714 maybe, or a 7.1 or whatever custom arrangement for that matter of fact. So up to 12 speakers. And then we do support ambisonic as well with the SPAT Revolution Essential. Third order ambisonic only with presets for ambics and other normalization. But those are 3 main streams to choose from with Essential, and you'll see it in action. I'm going to be using Essential today for this presentation, so we kind of refer to that as we go along. Good stuff. Well, you know what? I've been talking for just 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, and we're ready to get started. I'm going to be firing. Our dear friend SPAT here. Let me just do a little. Let me just do this for a quick second as I get ready. Actually, got some new configuration today. Let's see how that pans out for us. This, this, and this. And what does that do? Okay. I think we are good. So you should see my SPAT screen, and we'll have some little bullet points on the right side. You are actually right now looking at, what we call the home page. So that is something new. This home page, it's a welcome page that you get when you open SPAT. Quite simply on this home page, really, you get welcome with the version you're on. So I'm on SPAT Revolution Essential today. It would be written Ultimate if it was the case. I can create session and open session right there. But the 2 most important thing in my book anyway is, the fact that we have all the recent sessions on the left side that I can rapidly recall. Something that we did not have, and now it's a nice one. And on the right side, resources, being the user documentation, a link to the user doc online, being the templates for digital audio workstation, being templates for QLab, for actually OSC cues. We have a lot of information. Live console templates, as you can see, all is there. We're just kind of trying to, centralize information in this new homepage. So very interesting one. Called the home page, and that's pretty much where you're going to be starting a session with that famous setup wizard. I say famous because it is, been kind of, very nice to configure the session, not having to deal necessarily with the blocks and the connection. We showed this last week, right? So if you actually hit the create session on this, you get this wizard that allows you to create the session for you, the setup, the blocks. And we've covered this last week. If I actually go and create a setup right now, in Essential, you do not need to configure everything, in between the inputs and outputs. You know, you got inputs and outputs that are your software inputs or your hardware inputs. We've covered that last week. But then the in the center is all managed by thy setup wizard. So you don't have to manage this. And it's not just for creating, but it's for modifying. So if I go back to this setup wizard, I can actually change the format of that room to another format. I can actually add some sources as well. And it's going to actually reconfigure, you know, our center configuration if you want, you know, all our object source blocks, our room, you know, the master. You'll just need to do your connection. That's the end, right? That's what we showed, you know, boom, do the connection and so on and so forth. Connect your output somewhere and you are done. So that was the old concept of, you know, of SPAT Essential and simplifying the configuration of a setup, a start setup anyway. Good. Hope everything is going well and the audio is good. I'm just going to fix this microphone, which is pulling in the back. I'll do this properly. Sorry for that. My friend Arsène can probably come in my ear and tell me, yes, everything is good. Or not. Compatibility wizard. Yep, I hear a yep in my ear. Thank you, sir. Compatibility wizard. And that is important because now that we're talking about sessions for ultimate and, you know, sessions for essential, well, someone could say, Hugo, don't tell me that my sessions aren't, you know, compatible if I create in one or create in the other and I want to pass session. Maybe a creator is working on the larger ultimate version and then, you know, an associate, you know, just needs the smaller version. He's dealing with less sources. So we've, obviously, it is the same session. It is the same JSON file, but we have brought a compatibility wizard. And would be better than this, I'm just actually going to fire it. You know, I've asked now to open and not saving this. I'm going to go and open a configuration. And I'll do it from my home page because we love the home page. I'm going to try to open this little session. This is actually the session of... yeah, let's try that one. And I do not want to set the current session. So basically what's going to happen here is I'm opening a session that was creating an ultimate, which had more than one room and actually more than the 32 allowed audio sources. So the compatibility basically allows you to not break your mix, not break the object position, but decide which of these source objects you want to keep or not. Because yes, we are limited to 32 audio sources. And you see it right there, right? I can remove some and add some on the fly. Then the last decision that you would need to make if you're moving from an ultimate to an essential is actually choosing which of the room. In ultimate, we support multiple rooms, environments, right? Render format that you can render in parallel. As you know, some of you that are familiar with SPAT Revolution, you know, is a very interesting and creative way to do projects. But what we've got here basically is the ability to choose one. So you basically can choose the room itself. And if you're choosing the binaural here, I'm going to be opening this session. You know, and you see it will not let me open it now because I had too many sources, too many audio channels, and I just removed one, and now we're good. And then you can go OK, and it's going to present you an actual save as. And the reason it brings you a save as, well, it's so you actually have, oh, my little object is moving. Thank you, Space Map Go. Basically, a save as so you can save that session under a new name, right? Obviously, you are changing the session or you are making it compliant. And so by saving it under a new name at that point, you know, you can reopen it without dealing with the compatibility. It is now an essential ready. It can still go back to ultimate after, but that is the dynamic there with what we call the compatibility wizard. Good. Next, the drag and connect. Well, we've saw that. You know, we've kind of seen it. Well, this one is actually all done for us, right? But if I actually go and create a new session, like we did this actually a bit earlier, right? Just say 3 audio sources in a room, and I'm going to go with software input. What basically, you know, you need to do at the end after that is what I was showing you, the drag and connect, right? So this is a mono. I want it in that mono object connected there. This is a binaural. I want to send it to the binaural return. By the way, why are those software inputs already there? Because my friend Pro Tools is here with me today, which we're going to be using as we move along with some audio, okay, in the session. So yeah, the drag and connect, pretty damn great, to make things go fast. Now, if we want to change the format, right back to this, remember, you can modify the session, decide that you want to add, some sources, some objects. Like in this case, I've got all these, software inputs on the top, but I don't have enough objects. So I can actually go and back to the setup wizard and say, well, no, I need, 12 sources. And I can actually change the format, the stream type on the fly too. Oh, I was on channel base. No, Hugo, I wanted to have binaural. You just go back and okay, everything gets reconfigured. Now you can connect all these others, reconnect your output, and you're done, right? But the object property, the source property, would still be there as you're changing this, So yeah, changing render format. That would be the ideal scenario if you want to, bounce, and render a binaural, and maybe you want to change the format and bounce another format. Something that in Ultimate you can do in parallel. In Essential, you would do in multiple pass. Doing a non-mix maybe version of that mix, of that object mix. As we've talked a bit last week, we've got all these predefined common arrangements, for speakers. You see they are there, when we get in the setup wizard, when we are in channel base. In Essential, you're already seeing, everything that's under 12 channels, so what you are allowed to use. But we have added actually a few new predefined arrangements. We've actually added some Dolby Atmos SMPTE standard channel ordering, and we try to keep, updated and following what's going on. It's impossible to put them all. If we were to put everything that exists, that existed once, the list would get pretty long. And my list is long because I've been doing a bunch of tests here. But so the point is that you are trying to provide as much as possible, but you're always welcome to modify them. As you know, if you've been around SPAT Revolution, you can rapidly edit those. We're not going to cover this today. If it comes as a question, we can do that later. Good stuff. And can be used in stereo, right? I've talked about it. These new panning types, if I choose an actual stereo room, I choose a stereo pan, and I'll go back and connect with the software. I want you to appreciate that we have these new panning laws right there. So if I pull down, you get the sinus cosine, you get square roots, and you get a new one that's called perceptually motivated amplitude panning. I won't get into details of this today. We're most probably going to do some documentation on it. It's not in the user guide yet. That was the one that we did not spend time on it. But anyway, you've got these 7 panning methods that you can use right there. Okay? Good stuff. And then the matrix for the I/O management, right? That's kind of back to the getting started. Well, right now I'm in software input output. But if I was actually not, and I could just basically just close this session here, right? Do you want to close it? Yes, I want to close it. Back to the home page, create a session. But this time I'm going to do it with hardware, not software, just so you appreciate the matrix. Just going to do this quick. Okay. I did not press on the matrix or what? What did I do? Well, sorry for that. I probably did not press on the good button. Okay. Oh, it's maybe because it's seeing some software input. Haha, got catch on this one here, I think. Okay with hardware? Yeah. Okay, no demo on this one because my software, but anyway, I wanted to show you the matrix that we have. You're not going to see it now. Oh, I don't want to close Pro Tools. I'm kind of ready to move on with some audio here. But the matrix for managing, your hardware. So when you do setup wizard and actually go okay with hardware I/O, you are seeing the matrix, validating basically your patch on the input side and output side. And that's when you're dealing with an audio device and not software in and out, right? Okay. And then managing your preferences, people that are used to SPAT Revolution, right, those preferences. I am actually using those preferences today because I'm actually inputting in OSC from our lovely Space Map Go trajectory controller. We are supporting that grammar for actually, if people are starting to create, and want to use that trajectory control. I'm using it just to swing some objects, in demos. But, that is how this is supported. We do have a preset for it now. That's actually part of 21.4 as well. And as we're covering the subject, right, you just basically choose that as an input. And one thing to know for people that know the space map system is they use an actual map of 1000 by 1000. Well, that wouldn't make sense. It is not scaled value, so we want to scale it to something, and by default we have a scale to 10 by 10, meaning what? Well, x, y, 10 minus 10, okay? So basically we're kind of scaling this, and we could change this as well. You'll see it when I actually play it. So our famous OSC configuration. Now, let's jump into the hard part of the subject, object distance behavior, and some of the changes there. Because, and actually what's interesting in all this, and this beautiful work that the team pulled on this one, and it covers, you know, the need to actually see what you're actually doing, you know, because there's some things behavior wise in the panning that people may not have not realized. So let's, where do we go from there? Cancel, close this session. Okay. And I should be able to open, yeah, let's open this Close Talker session using Close Talker. And you see, well, again, compatibility, I did it on purpose. This one has 2 rooms. There's source is fine. There's not too many sources, but there's 2 rooms. Which one? I'm going to take the binaural. Why? Because that's what I'm going to be sending to you in your ears. Do you want to save it? I don't care to save it. And voila. So this is our session of today, and I will actually going to confirm that OSC is coming in, and we have our friend on the space map side that's spinning that vocal for us. Thank you, space map, which we could do later on. So object behavior, I will be focusing on some, and I will be listening to that as well. Yep. Okay. So we're looking at this object. So what I want you to start to appreciate is, and you may already, if you have been around, you may have been actually, you know, seeing some of those lines, you know, that are actually, and some of this new information when you are getting into, the radius. And we're going to talk about this radius. Let me just switch this here. Okay, so the radius. What's the radius? If you're new around here, you know, you're probably wondering what's that radius all about. And even some people that have been around maybe have not realized, you know, one of the things that happen often is you're starting to mix and people are like, I'm losing a lot of levels, right? Well, the truth of the matter is that every single object in SPAT Revolution previous to 21.4, you know, add this radius parameter, and we still have it, but I'm going to explain the changes today. So a radius basically, you know, is the ability per object to define at which distance the level is starting to drop, okay? At which distance it starts to drop, and by default, we actually drop at 6 dB. Now, you are seeing here the SPAT Essential, UI, not the full Ultimate. In the Ultimate, the drop factors are available, you know, directly on the object. In Essential, it is a global preference. You know, you know, if we do it here, you see the drop factor here. We're actually at 6 dB. So what's important to understand is this drop factor is actually what defines what's actually happening, right? From that zone, from that radius, that line, as the object starts to move, is how much, you know, amplitude you're losing over distance. So that is very important because, you know, you put an object far, well, obviously you're going to be losing signal. And if you are using the SPAT reverb engine, the SPAT room, well, you're obviously going to be hearing more of the room. You're losing that direct sound, okay? You're losing that direct sound. Few important things to actually discuss as I'm actually going to spin this room. Okay. Sorry for that. 1 second. Yes. So what I want you to start to realize with this this actual radius zone is one of the things that's actually, part of how SPAT was designed for the longest time is when a source, and now we're going to be talking about 3D, when a source actually comes in, and have a look at what's happening on the right side here, which is my view of an elevation. When you're bringing a source inside, look this new information that we have, and this is actually available from what we call the presence information here. You're not obliged to see it, but I want you to appreciate that as I'm bringing object will, from the center inside, the source elevates. Okay, the object panning wise, this is what's happening. You're actually going above the head. You're not letting the object go in. This was the default behavior for SPAT, and some people didn't realize it, that bringing the source inside was maybe creating some some artifacts. Well, in binaural, for example, it's simple. That's exactly what was happening. And we can actually listen to this with audio. That will be one thing that I want you to appreciate. Well, maybe we actually get to start to do audio. I'll put my headphones. It's always better with some audio. Put my lovely Shure headphones. Okay, let's have a look. We'll be soloing on Will. Are we seeing what we want to see? Yes. We're in binaural audio. I'm going to be sending a solo on this Will track. We have a radius parameter. We are now at 2 meter. Okay. So if I expand this, you see what's happening as I get to the source? It starts to elevate, right? Because you are inside. By default, just to go back for the ones that are new to the radius, simple to understand, we are using a 2 meter radius by default everywhere. Do I want to talk about this now? Yeah, why not? Why is 2 meter? 2 meter is our predefined arrangement, speaker arrangement normalization. Our speaker line is always at 2 meter. The source defaults at 2 meter. When you reset the source position, it's at the 2 meter line center, right? If I actually reset this source, what's going to happen? It's going back to the 2 meter line. So 2 meter is the key number. That's why the radius is at 2. So by default, when you're reset, you're not losing any amplitude as long as you don't start to move it back. And to repeat myself, when you're starting to move it back, you are dropping, for people that are following, 6 dB, which is law of physics. So we're following this. Now you can change this. As I said, ultimate, you can change it per object. In Essential, we made this a global behavior. It's at 6 dB by default. You can change it if you want to, don't want to have that too big of a drop and you want to have room to move, okay? We'll get to hear this right now. We are in SPAT Essential. We are using a 6 dB, so you'll be hearing that 6 dB drop on that wheel channel. And then, so 2 things that I'm going to appreciate with the audio here. We'll be moving the source inside. You'll be and you'll see what's actually happening binaural-wise. It's going to go over your head. The other thing you'll be able to appreciate, obviously, is that drop. Okay, let's try that. Is that working? Should work.
We have done this dance before.
Just 1 second.
Nothing is new.
I'm not hearing anything. Are you?
My head
You are hearing something.
been residing.
So it will be better if I put some monitoring in my ears. Aha. Then I can hear what I'm doing, right? That would be a smart move. Okay, let's try this again from the head.
We
Okay.
have done this dance before. Nothing is new, but my head's been residing.
Now I want you to appreciate what's going on
Further,
as I'm going in.
I bet it's with you.
Just want to make sure we're in binaural here.
Feeling faintly and thinking I don't know myself lately as well as I used to feel. Got nothing under control. When will I figure
Can you
it
hear what's
out,
happening here?
my dear? Seems like I'm going through the motions here, hanging on to every single fear.
The
Guess
source is
it's
going
just how
above, and this
it
is
goes.
the behavior
So
that we've
let's
been calling, the protection zone and the over listener. Now, we made some changes to this, and we'll introduce that today as well. Again, I want to get more flexibility. Um, just switch here. So, the old conversation with radius or protection zone, like we're introducing it now, is that it can be challenging, right? If you're scaling the speaker setup, right, to a bigger one, and you put your sources behind it, right? Like, I'll actually do that. You're losing a lot of signal, and then you got a position there, and you're changing your speaker setup. There's always some challenges with with that distance. Where's that distance should start dropping, right? That's a big question. So we kind of start to reflect on all this with this release to deal with the actual scaling. Um, the reason in Essential, for example, that we actually kind of wanted to simplify it. We've added as I said, the drop factor as being a generic one. But the other thing that we wanted to do is to bring a single protection zone parameter for the room. So you can see here, that we still have an actual per object, radius. But what we've added, and you can see this in the output section, is a overall protection zone. You see it on my screen, maybe? Yes, you probably see it. An overall protection zone for all the room, okay, as a room generic parameter. The reason we wanted to do this is that you can manage this from a room perspective if you don't want to do it at the object level, right? And often it makes sense for a cohesive mix to kind of use a single radius, or here in this case, we call it the width, and I'll cover this in 2 seconds, having a single protection zone for all the objects. Because obviously you can do it separately, but it becomes a bit out of whack, out of control. Some are behaving different than the others. If you're purely mixing music, and maybe makes sense. If you're in sound design and you're trying to doing some creative things, it may apply. But that was one thing that we really wanted to clean up with that room parameter. And that brings obviously the question for people that have been around SPAT Revolution. It brings as well the conversation. Well, how do we deal with the legacy, right? I had a bunch of radius on my session. Well, basically, whatever setting you have before are being changed when you're opening a session and on the object, and it is under the hood a trim factor from that major or that general room parameter, if it makes any sense. We'll keep talking on this subject because that is a big part of the subject of the day, and you'll get some questions on this, I'm sure, as well. But the whole idea is obviously to enhance the feedback. This object distance behavior was enhance the feedback of the actual object, which is great because when you're doing something, you kind of want to understand what's going on. So presence, so and so forth, right there for us. Now, two things are happening. As I was explaining, like before in SPAT Revolution, by default, when the source object comes inside the radius in 3D, right, it will want to elevate, as you're seeing there. Number one, you can now change that behavior thanks to the little switch here that says source over listener. Now, if you uncheck it, you have now the ability to actually enter if you want. Now, you are clamped level-wise, right? You're not, then we actually see this. Let's have a look. Okay, now you see, you go up, you're not seeing, that little object go above like you are seeing. And the reason is as simple as now you are actually entering the radius. And we have a new line here, and that line is important. Why? It basically tells us that the real object position is actually that little point right here. Okay? Not this object inside per se. We are clamped at that radius zone. And then inside, there's no level difference. As you start to go out, and I guess you can appreciate maybe the green light, the green line. As you're starting to go out, just 1 second. Yeah, as starting to go out, now see the level goes down. And maybe it's not too clear on this, but this line, will go lighter as you go further away. Yeah, yeah. The green, there's a green. Yeah, it's not maybe too clear, but yeah. So you see, you come inside. Now we let you go inside. You're not going above the head. You see where the object is clamped, if you want, or the real position. So we call this the real position, okay? The real position of the object as you go in. So new option, hover above listener, right? You see it. Yeah. Spin this room a bit. You can clearly see what's going on, when you spin the room around. Okay, so that is for 3D. Now I'm going to change the setup to 2D to explain, and we'll go back to the setup wizard quick. Now you won't be able to listen to it, but that's fine. We'll go back to binaural right after. Just going to go stereo is actually fine. What I want you to appreciate here is that, number one, you cannot change the source over listener. Why is this? Well, this is a lock parameter now. Why? Because I've just chose a 2D arrangement, okay? Go above what? There's nothing to go above, right? So in this particular room now, we won't have anything go above or actually clamp. And we did this because, someone could, by mistake, for example, start to elevate, a parameter on a 2D arrangement. And obviously that would not do anything because there's no elevation. So we're clamping, we call it, to that layer. Let me try to actually show this in action. Well, the concept of the clamping, you can see it again because when I was showing this to you, right? That's the real position. Let me just try to get. Well, we don't even have it. That's probably a new feature. Well, maybe if the developer's online, they could confirm me this. You can't see a top front view now if you're on a 2D arrangement. That would be interesting. You can still spin it then. Yeah, but there's no more con there. Okay. So I still have my view, and that's exactly what I wanted to show you. So as I bring this object elevation-wise, you see clearly that it's clamped on the layer, on the 5.1, on the stereo, on the 2D, okay, because it is a 2D arrangement. And I can actually change this on the fly, try to remember that picture. If I go on the fly on a 5.1.4, let's try that. There's my matrix I wanted to show you earlier. There it is for you. And now you see what's happening on the 5.1, okay? You are being... you are going above, as we were talking. You are no longer clamp. Just an important thing to understand here. I can obviously remove it. Remember, we have that source over ed or not dynamic, which obviously, in binaural, but works as well in channel base, okay? Different behavior. So yeah, in 3D, you can either basically, in 3D would be binaural or an arrangement with, some elevation. By default, as we said, we are going above, and you can change this and let it, I'll say, go inside. It doesn't change level-wise, and you are clamp, on that level, but you're not being forced above. And in 2D, so 2D arrangement, stereo 5171, anything with a single, with no elevation, 0, you're clamped at that layer. Hope that makes sense. Maybe we can listen to a bit more. Well, I'll keep talking, and we'll take questions, and we can listen to more stuff as well. Um, so that kind of brings us to talk about this protection zone, because they're totally linked now. So what we have done, and you see it in the output section, is we now have a per room, as I was saying, protection zone, a per room. What was the radius? Some confusion here. Let's make this clear. You see 4 meter. Yeah, I say, Hugo, you were telling me 2 meter. Why 4 meter? Well, basically, look at this, what's written here. It's the width, okay? It's the diameter of that zone. Radius is half, right? 2 meter, 4 meter. Bit of confusion there, but this is the actual complete width of the sphere. Oh, and for the ones that are have not seen this, this is actually following the movement of the head as well. Okay, so as I move the head up, down, whatever I'm doing movement wise, I'm moving the protection zone, and you visually can see the impact of moving the listening position. Okay, and being in binaural or in channel base. Not that channel base, always it was not the most, uh, the most places that we use, movement of the listener per se. Typically, we'll do this in binaural, with the head tracking, for example. But yeah, you can appreciate now that this protection zone is following the head, and you visually see the impact it will have, right? If I'm moving this, you see that these sources now have a signal drop, and you see that other source are now in the bubble, so they're actually clamped, right? To, depending if I'm source overhead, clamped there or not, okay? Little parenthesis on this. So yes, the 4 meter is by default the parameter now, which is 2 meter, and that's it. And if you don't change it, it will be a 4 meter. If you are in an ultimate, you can modify it, per object if you want to keep that approach. But if you don't want to bother with this, you could just, when you're creating a new session, Essential, for example, you can simply go to the output and decide to change it globally if you want, for all your objects to have the same dynamic, okay, with that protection zone. And there's more coming on that conversation. So new spherical protection zone, it's a width, and it's a per room setting. Each room have their setting. Now, it defines the radius, that dynamic of the radius that, the people that have been mixing with SPAT Revolution are aware of, okay? Yeah, I'm highlighting it. Default is 4 meter diameter or 2 meter radius. Okay. For standard arrangements, why do I say this? Because there's another interesting part that was worked on regarding this. I'll cover in a second. Yeah, radius still available as an object. Even in Essential, we left it there in the option page. You can actually see it there, right? It's kind of an hidden option. So I think by default, this menu, and this menu is actually not there. So you typically don't see it. But if you expand right here, you could see that those parameters, the actual drop, the actual radius. Oh, a little UI thing here. Okay, good. Let's see what we've got. And yeah, the reason, we kind of kept the per object as well, although there's some thinking maybe of, is there really a need to have a per object? Well, we decided to leave it for compatibility as well, right? If you're loading a file and you add a bunch of different radius on objects, it's still going to work. It's just that that parameter is a trim now of the actual room setting, which is at the same default, if that makes any sense. We'll take questions if there's some. So yeah, we can rapidly now trim the overall behavior distance-wise, right, in the room with this function. Now, another level to this is when we're changing speaker arrangement. I explained. and there's a few things that are kind of part of this. Um, a concept of scaling was now added for as a per room setup. And scaling what? Would be the ability to scale your snapshots, all your automation, or any OSC messages. And that should actually work with our little friend here. Right? Let's take a look at this. Um, oh, I'm in Essential. Ha ha ha. You see? I got caught. We don't have that scaling in Essential. Yeah, I'm gonna switch to Ultimate in 2 seconds. Let me just go on that screen quick. I'm gonna change and I'm gonna put the Ultimate license so we can have a look at that. 1 second. And the process of that is just to add the Ultimate license. That's how it works, right? SPAT Revolution Essential is the base license. And you can acquire it, or subscribe to it as only the SPAT Revolution Essential functionality. Well, in Ultimate, it's a bundle now, right? Ultimate license, Essential license, because Essential is always needed. It's kind of the base license, but all the same software. So I'm going to add myself. I should have that in stock. Yes, I have that in stock. Okay, not seeing anything yet. You will see in 2 seconds. Okay, thank you, iLok Manager. My friend Nicolas, if he's online, he's going to tell me, Hugo, I told you, put the Ultimate license on an iLok key, and this way you just put it in as need be. I haven't been doing this. Okay, back. Pro Tools is there. We'll be opening SPAT. And now I should say, welcome to SPAT Ultimate. Does it say that? Yeah, I'm sure it will be nice with me. Well, it doesn't because it's not on the home page, but it is on the home page telling me exactly this. Okay, setup. Let me just reopen this session from the home page because we love the home page. And now it's not going to ask me for compatibility. It's going to let me put the 2 rooms on that same session, room 1 and room 2, because I am in Ultimate, right? The 2 rooms are there. Okay, where were we? Yay, thank you. So we have a scaling to actually we call it to the actual distance, parameter. We have 2 scaling factors. One that was there before, which is for tracking system, black track specifically, the RTT RPM protocol. That is still there in our parameters, but what is new is a distance scaling. And if let's try that. Let's try that with Will. Let's go with space map. And if I actually do distance, I should be doing it on the OSC as well. Huh. No, maybe not. Or maybe it's because it's 2 rooms. Maybe I got caught here. Let me just try something quick for you here. Let's just do that. Just gonna put more of those. Let's go 9. Sorry. If you can start to ask some questions, and you feel free. We're gonna start to take some. We like to take questions. I want to create a little something here. 10. Okay, let's see that. Single room. You're missing one object. Hugo, what did you do? I'm going to get there, Arsène, you have questions already? As we, maybe specific on the subject of protection zone? You can take some later as well. No question for me. Uh-oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Let me try to do this another time. Oh no, in the stereo room. Okay, thank you. Voila. We'll get there. Okay, and is that working? Yes, thank you. That was most probably because I was connected to two rooms, so I was not scaling it, and most probably, maybe a little bug. What I want you to appreciate now is I can actually scale the OSC incoming data as well as if it was automation from Pro Tools, as well as our snapshot. So if you had created some snapshots, and that will get interesting when we talk about scaling, if you had, created snapshots that were for specific speaker arrangement and you're changing, you're going in a bigger venue and a bigger arrangement, the system is changing, you can now with this scaling parameter scale automation by a ratio, fairly powerful, not fairly, very powerful in my book. So you see, yeah, I'm scaling up or down the incoming, spin, circle spin that I'm getting from our friend there, okay? Now, it's not finished. We haven't stopped there. So scaling parameter, number one. Number two, an automatic scaling option as you change the arrangement. What does he mean? Well, you'll see this in action here. If I change this arrangement, and I'll take an arrangement that was custom, I can probably take well 4. Yeah, fine, the little message is normal. Here basically is telling me that you are changing a speaker arrangement and offering me two things. Number one, it offers to set the tracking, the scaling, not the tracking, so the distance scaling to the arrangement change. So, and what we are, and you precisely will see here, that, and it's based on the average speaker distance. So it's basically looking at that arrangement, taking the average distance of the speaker and using this to become the new protection zone, the new radius for all. That's the easy part, but it offers you as well to scale your mix. So if I accept this, what's actually happening here is that I've actually trimmed. I actually trimmed my scale, basically. I scaled down from the other arrangement, changing to this arrangement, okay, based on the average size. But it does two things. It does offer you to apply that scaling, so changing arrangement. I can actually go for a lot bigger one, maybe. Maybe makes more sense. Yeah, let's try this one here. Yes, 8 time. Okay. This is a big speaker arrangement. So you see the scaling was done. So that circular movement that you had going in on a smaller scale system, the automatic scaling offer allowed me not to redo all my automation, okay? This is an example. This is, I think, a Cirque du Soleil. Yeah, it's a Cirque du Soleil setup, a bunch of speaker, there's a center stage and all that. So I basically scaled, and there's two things that happened for me on this one. Number one, it offered me the scaling, and I accepted it, so it did it. I could obviously reset it if I want and go back to whatever, okay? Number two, it changed the actual protection zone of that, the protection zone of that room based on the arrangement. And that's something new that we're doing. And I'll kind of explain on that because we have people, for example, the best example of this, would be, I'm just going to stop this object to move from a second, is that, you have an actual object, and and you've got a speaker arrangement, but think that, let's say that, the width was at default 2 meter, like it would normally be if I didn't have this system. Now, what would happen is if we go to this beautiful little object here, I'm just going to solo on it. And I'm going to unmute the room. I just want to make sure I'm not sending you this audio. You shouldn't be hearing it. Okay, so now the problem we have, you are getting the reverb. The problem we have is this source here that you would typically put, maybe behind the speaker line. is actually so far from that radio zone that you're losing a lot of signal. So this was the old concept, is allowing you to set the actual protection zone of that speaker automatically. And we take the average. If it's a uniform system, all speaker at the same distance, well, that'll be simple. All to be the same. If it's like this one, different distance, it will make an average protection zone based on the scale and the distance of all these speakers, okay? That's the new dynamic, okay? Protection zone changed with the speaker arrangement, option to scale the automation automatically, or you could do it manually, okay? So as I said, scaling is offered as an option, and it's all together. Automation OSC snapshot is everything that has to do with automation of that object, okay? And as I was saying, it's fixing the distance behavior when you're moving to a speaker arrangement to another. Right? Go to a smaller one. If we go to a smaller one, the same would apply here. Let me try that. If I actually go back to a 5.1, it's going to scale this down to 0.15, and it's going to adjust my behavior. So you see, I have the same, if I accept this, I basically end up having the same relationship distance-wise on a bigger setup, on a larger setup. Well, it was an average on the speaker setup in the one that we had before, but you're basically getting as close as possible as far as your distance relationship without having to redo all the automation. But people that have been, working in SPAT and doing, live production or sound designs, changing arrangement, not in traditional form of a 5171, but with custom arrangements, moving from one to the other is, comes with challenges. Automation, for example, and this is really the solution, okay? Yes. How are we doing? We're doing good on time. And there's secret features. Oh, yeah. We love secret features. I'll soon get to take some more questions if they come. Secret features. Well, I'm calling them secret because we didn't publicly talk very loudly about them. I'm not even in a user guide yet. But two things that have been around and, our users are going to love it for it. We weren't sure. The reason it's secret, and we weren't sure if they were releasing or not being released, but our lead developer, a gal and founder of the company, did a beautiful implementation on what? Well, on the two things. I'll just drop the first one, signal generator. Yes, so on an hardware input, I am connected here, there's actually an input type option now. I'm going to make sure that I disconnect and not send any stupid signal in your ears. I can actually get the signal generator going. And by the way, the preferences, if it's pink noise or what type of signal and the level, and it's by default at -18. But if it's a pink or white or sweep, is chosen in preferences. So you need to do some, some testing rapidly, change the actual input to a signal generator, and then you have an object, signal object. Well, that's my audio. There it is. Okay. All right. And if I put the nebula, I can seeing, well, yeah, the room is muted now. Voila. A little nebula, yes. All right, so you can see the impact of moving this object around with that generator. Easy peasy. We love that one. And you can change it live, okay, just back to a live input, back to your patch release. So alternating on this. Number one, secret. And the second one, it's actually been there since the 22.12 release, and that's send to analyzer. For the one that are familiar with the FLUX, the FLUX legacy, but the FLUX flagship applications, there's a bunch of processing tools. We have the audio pipe technology, right, that we use in SPAT Revolution, but there's another piece of technology, of moving samples from a workstation or from a live console all the way to our analysis system, something called Sample Grabber. A little plugin, you extract audio, you bring to the analyzer. Well, guess what? This actual technology is now inserted in SPAT Revolution. That allows us to do what? If I need to send this 5.1 mix, I can actually activate it. And in theory, I haven't tested this, but I know it works. And if we fire our analyzer, we'll be seeing this SPAT Revolution as a source. Okay, so bounding. Well, now you're seeing my microphone live, and SPAT Revolution. Is it this one or it's this one? Yeah. Okay, so you are seeing the signal through SPAT Revolution. Now it's a 5-channel. I could change it to a 5-channel, but you get the concept. It's in SPAT. It's being sent to an analyzer. Does not need to be on the same computer, by the way. This works on a network of computers, so your analysis is going to be on a separate machine. Typical scenario when we do it in a live here, the console sends the sample, and I have a sidecar analyzer. And you can have multiple ones for that matter of fact. Great for studios, multiple studio. You can pick which studio you're monitoring, from an analysis perspective. But this is coming from SPAT. Yeah, so source is SPAT. You say I've got multiple SPAT. Why is this? Because there's a few SPAT kicking around in the room active. And this is my iMac audio. Voila. Okay, send to analyzer. Little gift from our lead developer as a new feature. We haven't really made big noise about it, but we should. And not just the room, by the way. You can send a master module. You can even send directly, if my memory is correct, the actual input block. So the source, basically, pretty much all our modules have the option now to send to analyzer. Now it's one active. You activate one, you deactivate the other. You don't have 70 instances of sample grabbing. That's gonna make your computer explode most probably at one point. Okay, so one is active at the time. Voila, 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 voila. And I think it's getting to the Q&A time. Let me just rapidly up. Yes. So we'll go back in Q&A mode. We'll see if there's any questions. We didn't listen to much stuff. I could bring back some audio. You appreciate some of it, as my friend Arsène will. Maybe he's talking to me. Or he's going to post questions. I'm going to load the sessions. No? No question. Well, that would mean that the crowd is very good, or I was clear enough, or people are too confusing. They're like, I don't want to ask questions. Hopefully, this actually clarified some of the the new behaviors. We really, and that started from really an intention of visually. I mean, from an education perspective, right? Here, what we've got with SPAT Revolution, we've got an immersive engine, that is not only panning. Number one, is obviously position of the object, but there's an actual distance behavior, right? The object moves, you lose amplitude. This is part of the core, really, of the concept. And then we have the room engine, right? The reverb that's actually kind of coming and tying all this together as you move the object far away. Obviously, hear more the room versus the direct, the presence of that source. You're basically applying on the presence. But all this was there, but not necessarily, visually being able to visually identify, identify what's going on, and that was the key equation here, visually representing this, and obviously when you enter inside, many people didn't even know, and it was not clear what was actually happening with the source with that over listener. So now it's clear, and you can change this if you want. So 2 bonus. Okay. Yes, there's a question. Alir Maris, can you show us some demo using the near field HRTF synthesis? Binaural works best in terms of localization. In terms of localization and with near fields, better than Dolby Atmos for headphones. Not sure I fully the Dolby better than Dolby Atmos from headphone. Well, you're probably referring to this the I would assume anyway. Um, you're referring to the near, far, and mid setting, most probably in Dolby. If that's what you're referring, we do not have that. Um, on the Essential version, we only have a standard binaural using HRTFs in the actual SPAT Revolution Ultimate. You have 4 options, and one of them is a near field binaural. You would like us to show us some demos using the HRTF. I could probably turn it on. I'm not sure it's fully functional. Maybe it is. Let's see. Let's get back to some audio. But yes, Alir, I don't know if that's the question specifically. You know, we don't have a per object different behavior. You know, we kind of go for a single cohesion for the room. And we have this near field binaural type. So if that's a question, and we'll try to make it work and have you listen to it in 2 seconds as I fire this the session. Yep. Okay. So we have some audio. Remove that solo. Put back that source at the center. Okay, in room number 2, and I have changed it. I'm going to put this on the screen. I'm going to take another question, Alir. Not that I put you aside. We'll kind of go back to the audio in 2 seconds. Bertrand asks, Apple M1. Is that the Bertrand that I know? Maybe. Hello, Bertrand. Apple M1 Rosetta compatibility. Very good question, an important question of the day. And it's important because the word M1 shows up on all forums, not just FLUX, across. We see this everywhere. We're like everyone being very careful because just saying it's compatible. Well, in SPAT there's audio devices involved. There's maybe it's not just about the application. There's an integration. So we are trying to be very careful to say what we can for sure confirm is, we are Big Sur compliant as part of that was a back to 20.12 December release, compliant with Big Sur. And Apple M1, we've been buying some machines. There's actually 2 coming in to replace these Intel machines here in Montreal, and we have a few machines at the headquarters in France as well. And I've been testing right now in compatibility mode, if you want, right? You're asking the question, Bertrand of Rosetta. SPAT is performing amazingly well on the Rosetta right now. Better performance on Apple M1 than the previous Intel machine, which I won't make detailed comment on, but we are important gain in performance processing-wise with the M1, even with the Rosetta. For the one that are familiar, Rosetta is basically the translator that makes our application that was coded to Intel and be able to run on ARM processor, the new processor. So it's running very, very, very well. We will be doing that porting over to ARM. That will take some time. There's quite a bit involved, but so far, huge gain. As I said, watch a few things, audio interfaces. Even Big Sur broke a few, audio interfaces, but just be really, really careful on the other aspect of, but SPAT runs fine. We've been doing a bunch of bench testing lately at low latency and seeing what we can get out of those little Mac M1s, Mac Mini M1s, for example, which are same from the laptop. Another question, and Alir Maris, I haven't forgotten you. Trust me, we'll finish off on listening some audio. I'll actually play the session without the solo. You'll get to hear it. We'll be in near field binaural, if you want to appreciate that. D'Artagnan Brown in the US, I think, if that's the D'Artagnan that I think. Are the new setup wizards now available in SPAT? Yes. So the setup wizard has been there. It is behaving a bit differently in the Essential because it's literally managing your config between the input and output blocks. The setup wizard is all to deal with this. You can't modify blocks, reorder blocks. It's locked. You've seen it. Now I'm in Ultimate. I'm going to switch my computer because I'm going to need this. So the answer is yes. I can probably even go in a bit of detail here. How is that? That's 1 second. Okay. I'm going to be going back to this here. So yeah, actually, Setup Wizard, if I go in Setup Wizard here, it's there. We're in an Ultimate version right now. What it does allow you to do as well is actually either connect object sources to currently existing room, multiple rooms in the case of Ultimate, right? Again, or create a new room from the wizard. But yes, it is working. Different behavior a bit because in Ultimate you've got all this flexibility of reordering and so on and so forth. Hope to answer the question, D'Artagnan. If there's more specific, Juan, one question about SPAT Live. One question about SPAT and Live. Can I use live automation, probably talk about Ableton Live, to send OSC to SPAT with the send plugin? Does it work steadily for you? Well, first of all, the question I'm going to ask you, you're probably Ableton, talking about Ableton Live. Please confirm this. And confirm if you're using AU or VST. Because that's obviously the other question. We bake an AU and a VST. I do know that there were some challenges reporting recently, actually, on the AU version. Sometimes some touch release, right? I mean, there's a lot going on, as far as touching object. For example, a dynamic that I see, and it's not just Ableton Live, but a dynamic if using external controllers like this one here, right? But it doesn't send touch messages to SPAT. Well, these touch messages aren't being registered for the workstation that's trying to record it. We've got to be careful in some of the behaviors. But the question with Ableton Live, yes. Now, to send OSC to SPAT with the send plugin. The question, are you using local audio or not? That's the other thing. The behavior is slightly different. But we have released some Ableton Live templates. I would have to verify with the team. Arsène, I don't know if you know, but maybe Jean-Loup. I'm not sure if Jean-Loup is around. We for sure have, solidly tested this with VST, maybe not as much in AU. So if you are having issues, because you said, does it work steadily for you? You're kind of maybe, assuming or presuming that it may be something wrong. Try switching to VST, see if that changes. And what I don't know right now from your question here is, are you using local audio, so live and SPAT on the same computer, passing the audio as well, which we can do. And there's some good documentation on now how to keep the synchronization happening with the little sync box tool that we made. Well, that Jean-Loup, our member, colleague, made. But if you are using it purely just for OSC sending and, that, yeah. So, but if you are having some issues, support at flux.audio, Arsène, Vincent, and the team can look it up if there's something. I don't have Ableton Live set Nef, but it's working. It's huge community of Ableton Live. Are there some specific things? Check VST AU. Maybe there's something with the AU. Voila. No more questions coming. So I guess if there's no more question coming, it's time for our friend Ali Maris, who've talked about our near-field binaural. So I've changed it to near-field binaural. They're all room. There's still, so there basically is a near-field effect added to this particular binaural synthesis that we'll be listening on. We've got our room or objects, and let's give this a listen a bit.
We have done this dance before. Nothing is
Give you some volume.
but my head's been residing somewhere further. I bet it's with you.
and I'll move the object.
Remember for a while, yeah, we've got a long ways until we get this right. Honey, these are dog days, but you're my all time. I have been spinning
Going above, remember, right?
these plates now and again. And I have been holding them over.
I guess the ideal scenario for you, Alir, would be to put a near field and a binaural. I could try to build this, but we're kind of going above time, and I've tried to make a promise to myself to keep these sessions to 45 to 1 hour, and I've been talking for an hour and 8-9 minutes. We welcome questions, and we're even thinking about making those webinars actually, kind of open session or open office kind of deal. Check our announcements. We'll be announcing more sessions soon. We're maybe on standby for next Thursday, same time. So that is for sure Thursday, noon East Coast here, 9 o'clock a.m. in LA and 6 in Europe, and so on and so forth. For the people in Asia, they're actually up late. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. But yes, so we're talking about maybe this concept of open office, and maybe in the open office we take specific, and this one could be a good exercise of doing an A/B on a standard binaural versus the near field binaural, and just switching the room from the other. I could do it, but as I said, time goes fast. So if there's no other questions. And my friend Arsène is going to be able to confirm me if there's actually more questions coming. And he says no. So I'm going to be sending you on a little video to wrap this up. You may have seen this if you've been around. I'm going to be sending you the Close Talker, what you were eating, thanks to the guys from Close Talker, a Canadian band that we did a binaural tour. Actually, was it 2-3 years ago now. We have great content. The song that you actually were listening just now was recorded live, and that's just a little mix that we done after the fact on it. Yeah, the full package on tour was actually with the console and the mixing engineer finding some movements and in the songs, premeditated things that he had prepared, little subtle movements, and everyone were wearing headsets. Anyway, I'm going to be sending you on letting you go on this video if you want to watch it, little 5-minute. Thanks for joining today. It was a great time. I can actually remove I'll keep my headphone. Why not? It was a great time. There was a lot of things that I wanted to cover today, but really focusing on the object behavior. That's the huge change. Watch some updates on the user documentation as well. We'll try to make all this very explicit, but now little information is in the room, and that's important information to have. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great end of day. See you most probably next Thursday on a session or on the following ones. I will try to come more active on those in the next weeks. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching, and I'll leave you with Close Talker for a little 5-minute. Cheers.
In my head tonight was perfect, but in yours it was quite the opposite.
What are we doing and why is it special? Like on the surface, we're doing a new type of silent headphone show using immersive binaural mixing, which is just a nerdy way of saying you're in the middle of the band and the instruments are around you as opposed to shooting at you. It's like the most basic way to say it. And we've learned that like it really does add value and depth to the experience.
Flat out ignore you.
So what's unique about it is our ability to put instruments around their head, and not just that in fixed positions, but we're also able to move instruments around their head live in real time. And what's kind of impressive on the tech end is that we're able to process this 3D movements around the subject in real time without latency. So all this to say, it's putting the audience in the center of the music and allowing the music to really engulf them is the idea.
In my head, my life's on night.
A typical headphone show would just be, you know, you do a mix through microphones and the band and everything, and you mic everything up, and then instead of like your outputs going to speakers, then it would go to headphones, and you'd have like headphone distros or wireless or whatever. And now with this binaural thing with the encoder, you use the same pair of headphones you would normally use, but you can treat the audio so it sounds like it's coming from all around your head.
You know I'm grown up, there are sins that I've got that I will one day.
Yeah, it'll be unconventional from even listening to music on your iPod. It's not gonna feel like that. It's not gonna feel like you're at a bar. It's not gonna feel like you're at a theater even. It's just such a new thing. But yeah, it's an immersive experience.
Both the philosophy of our new album and the philosophy of this project have kind of merged at the perfect time. As the tech is developing and the tech is trying to, again, solicit meaningful and immersive experience and doing a poor job of articulating whatever that is. But the whole album is this effort to describe something undescribable, which is a weird thing to say out loud, but that's basically it. It's us just wrestling with this idea of trying to define what makes something special, special.
It's gonna be different. It's kind of nice to have something where you're just listening to it, just you and the band. It's not, you can kind of connect more with the band, I feel. You can get a more sense of the music, because, I mean, live is always a great experience, but having it just you and the headphones, I feel like is gonna be a really unique experience.
So the way we have it set up is the console is processing all of the inputs, and then in the engine we have 2 MADI cards. So all of the inputs are processed, the direct outs are patched out to MADI. We have 2 MADI interfaces that are connected with 2 Mac Minis. And it's a fully redundant system, so they're both running in parallel, so if one fails, I can very easily, with one button, switch to my backup system, which is always following all my snapshots. Yeah, so a little shot of the snapshot page, super simple to use. Having all the plugin parameters on this encoder bank is integral. The integration of FLUX with SPAT is fantastic.
Yeah, like, to be honest, going in, I was thinking things like small things when you're kind of like, oh, I wonder if the lights outside will be distracting because the lights are still on, or I wonder if like the headphones will become annoying after a while. But honestly, as soon as they started playing, it just kind of like all faded away, and they just transport you to a whole other place.